Sister sits me down 1 week before her wedding and goes on and on about how she just wants this one invaluable gift from me and how if I don't agree, this will cost her entire relationship. I thought it's be nothing but my face turned pale when she asked me to spend the night with her fiancé who's liked me since the beginning. I told her to consider her marriage dead before it even began. My head is reeling and I want someone here to acknowledge that what I'm going through is actually insane. You see, my older sister, Maria, is getting married in just a week to her fiancé Matthew. They've been together for a long time ever since they started dating back in college. Maria is 5 years older than me, so when she began dating Matthew and started bringing him home to meet our parents, I was still in high school. I remember thinking he was such a cool guy probably because I was younger and looked up to him in a way. I always thought of him as an older brother figure, someone who made my sister happy and was there for her. At the time, I was genuinely happy for Maria and felt lucky that she had found someone who seemed like a good match. But now, when I look back, I can't help but realize that Matthew didn't treat me the way an older brother would treat his little sister. He was always a bit too friendly with me, if you know what I mean. It's hard to put into words, but you know those men in the family who make you feel uncomfortable. The ones who act just a little too flirty or who stare at you in a way that makes you feel like crawling out of your skin. That's how Matthew was with me. At first, I didn't even notice it, to be honest. I was too young to really understand what was happening or why his behavior felt different. I thought he was just being extra nice or maybe just paying me more attention than most people did. It didn't cross my mind that his actions could be anything but harmless. As I grew older, though, I started to pick up on the little things. He wasn't just being nice, there was something off about the way he acted around me. The lingering stares, the slightly flirty comments that didn't feel appropriate coming from someone who was dating my sister, it all started to add up. I began to feel a little creeped out by it, but even then I convinced myself that it wasn't a big deal. I told myself that Matthew didn't have bad intentions, that maybe it was all in my head or that I was overthinking things. I do remember there was an incident back in the day when Maria threw a party at our house while our parents were out of town. It was a fun night with music, laughter, and everyone drinking. Maria even encouraged me to join in on the fun. It was actually my first time drinking. And like most first-timers, I ended up having way more than I could handle. Before I knew it, my head was spinning and everything around me felt like it was swaying. I decided I'd better call it a night and head to my room, hoping the nausea would go away if I just slept it off. As I was stumbling down the hallway trying to steady myself, Matthew appeared out of nowhere. He saw I wasn't doing great and insisted on helping me to my room. At first, I thought he was just being nice, but something about the way he insisted didn't sit right with me. Still, I was too out of it to argue much, so I let him follow me. What happened next is a bit of a blur. I do remember finally making it into my room hoping he'd leave so I could lock the door behind him and get some peace. But Matthew wasn't leaving. Even though I kept telling him to go, he stayed in my room lingering like he didn't want to go anywhere. He kept hugging me, brushing his hands through my hair, whispering in my ear. I don't recall exactly what he was saying, but I was extremely weirded out by his behavior. All I could think about was how much I wanted him to stop and how wrong it all felt. He even tried pushing me towards my bed, and every time I swatted his hands away, he'd just try again. Thankfully, before things could escalate further, Maria walked in. She saw us and made Matthew leave the room immediately. I can't even tell you how relieved I was when he finally left. She then put me to bed and I finally got some rest. The next morning when I woke up and started piecing everything together, I knew I needed to talk to Maria about what had happened. I expected her to be upset, maybe even angry at Matthew, but her reaction wasn't anything like that. She brushed the whole thing off like it was no big deal. She told me Matthew had been drunk too and that him behaving like that with me wasn't intentional. Then she said something I'll never forget. She claimed that since she and I look so much alike, Matthew had probably just mistaken me for her. Maria also made me swear not to tell our parents anything. She said it would only cause unnecessary drama and that it wasn't worth it. When I protested, she made me feel like I was overreacting, like I was the one making a big deal out of nothing. Foolishly, I trusted her. I looked up to her as my big sister and I believed her when she said it was all just a misunderstanding. So I kept my mouth shut just like she asked me to. But after that night, I couldn't look at Matthew the same way anymore. Whether it was consciously or subconsciously, I started avoiding him. Whenever he came over to visit, I would try to make sure I was never alone in the same room with him. If he tried to hug me, I'd pull away or come up with some excuse to not be anywhere near him. I didn't feel safe around him anymore. As the years went by and I grew older and moved out, my interactions with Maria and Matthew naturally became less frequent. Distance and the busyness of life played a role, but I think a part of me also intentionally distanced myself. Those uncomfortable memories of Matthew lingered in the back of my mind, but I locked them away, refusing to think about them too much. It was easier than that to bury it all and move on with my life. Anyways, now, Maria is getting married to Matthew. Despite my feelings about her partner, I am happy for my sister as long as she is happy. My mom and I have been helping Maria plan her wedding for months now, and I've even taken on the role of her maid of honor. It's a big responsibility and I want to support her, especially since she's always been someone who dreamed of having a grand fairy tale wedding. She's been talking about it for as long as I can remember, and Matthew's making it all happen for her. He's agreed to all her plans no matter how extravagant, and is covering the bulk of the wedding expenses since our parents don't have much saved up. As her maid of honor, I have noticed that Maria has made certain unreasonable demands of me throughout this whole wedding planning process. At first, I chalked it up to normal bridal stress. She's under a lot of pressure and I wanted to be understanding, but over time her requests started feeling less about the wedding and more about controlling me. For instance, she's asked me to cut my long hair short, claiming she doesn't want me to stand out next to her on her big day. She also insisted that I wear a full-sleeve dress, even though all the other bridesmaids were wearing sleeveless dresses, and asked me to cover up more. At one point, she even suggested I dye my blonde hair brown because she thought my hair color might be too distracting for other guests. The worst part is she's even gone so far as to make comments about my body. I've always been someone who works out regularly and takes care of myself, but lately Maria has been pressuring me to eat more and skip workouts. She's outright told me that she doesn't want me to look better than her at her own wedding, as my body makes her feel insecure. It's hurtful, honestly, to have my own sister see me as some sort of threat or competition. While I've agreed to wear whatever dress she wants me to wear and do my best to accommodate her wishes, I've had to draw the line at some of her other demands. I told her I wasn't going to cut my hair, diet, or change my lifestyle just to make her feel better about herself. To me, those requests are unreasonable and unfair. Of course, Maria hasn't taken my refusal well. She's been passive-aggressive with me ever since, throwing little digs here and there or acting cold towards me whenever she doesn't get her way. Anyways, this week is their bachelorette party. Yesterday, Maria reached out asking if we could meet up for lunch. I assumed it was going to be about the wedding, maybe some last-minute planning or an update about one of her bridesmaids. I didn't think much of it and agreed, but I could never have prepared myself for what she was about to tell me. As we sat down at the restaurant, Maria seemed a little off, like she was nervous or hesitant about something. After some casual small talk, she finally got to the point. She told me that her fiancé Matthew has always had a crush on me. At first I thought I must have misheard her, but no, she repeated it, explaining that she's always known about it. She went on to say that Matthew admitted to her that he's been attracted to me since the very first moment he saw me. I was completely taken aback, unable to process what I was hearing. I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. The first moment he saw me, she was referring to, I was still underage at the time. Why would a grown man who was already dating my sister ever feel this way about her youngest sibling? It was sickening to even think about. But Maria continued to explain how, over the years, his so-called crush has never really gone away. She claimed it's pretty much harmless because he hasn't acted on it, but she admitted that he's told her he still thinks about me to this day. Hearing all this made my skin crawl. I felt deeply uncomfortable, repulsed, and confused. My mind was racing and I had no idea why Maria was even telling me all of this. I gathered my nerves and asked her point blank why she was sharing these details with me. I didn't want to know anything about her fiancé. However, if she wanted any advice or support regarding this, then I would be happy to help. But what my sister said next completely floored me. Maria told me that she'd never asked me for anything in her life, but now she wanted to ask me for this one invaluable gift. She even framed it as something I could give her as a wedding present. I couldn't understand where she was going with this. My stomach was in knots as I nervously asked her what exactly she wanted from me. That's when she dropped the bombshell. Maria looked me in the eye and told me that she wanted me to spend one night with her fiancé Matthew. For a moment I just sat there in stunned silence, unable to believe what I just heard. I felt like the air had been sucked out of me. Was she serious? Was this some kind of twisted joke? Spend the night with her fiancé. The look on her face told me she was dead serious about this. I couldn't even begin to comprehend what she was asking. My own sister was asking me to sleep with the man she's about to marry. It was beyond wrong, it was horrifying. I stared at her as if she had gone crazy. Instead of being embarrassed or even fazed by my reaction, Maria doubled down on what she was saying. She went on to explain how Matthew had decided that he didn't even want a traditional bachelor party with strippers like other men would. According to her, he had instead begged her for just one thing, a night with me, which, according to my sister, wasn't such a bad thing. She told me how Matthew sleeping with me was much better than sleeping with strippers. I asked her how she could possibly tell me something like this. And, even worse, how she could even still think about marrying such a man. I didn't hold back. I told her straight up that for her to ask me for something so vile, so repulsive was beyond comprehension. I asked her why she would even want to be with a man who openly admitted he had a crush on her younger sister. I told her that if she had even a shred of self-respect, she should leave Matthew immediately and never look back. But instead of seeing the gravity of the situation, Maria started defending him. She said he wasn't really a bad man for having feelings for me, and she tried to convince me that it was completely normal for older men to sometimes feel that way about younger women and how it was all about biology at the end of the day. She was trying her best to convince me that this was somehow a very normalized behavior, trying to make it sound like it wasn't a big deal, but I was just horrified. Maria went on to say that Matthew was an amazing partner in every other way. She called him supportive and loving and pointed out how he was paying for the majority of their wedding without complaining about her extravagant demands. As if that somehow excused his behavior. Then she said something that left me absolutely speechless. She told me that what Matthew was asking for wasn't really unreasonable and how if I didn't agree to it, it would cost her entire relationship. As in, Matthew would be pissed at her for not getting to sleep with me. According to Maria, asking me to sleep with him was just a small thing in the grand scheme of things. Something that would make him happy forever and then they could start their marriage on a happy note. She actually said that if I truly loved her then I should be able to do this for her as her sister. And if all of that wasn't appalling enough, she even tried to justify it by pointing out that because I was her sister she wouldn't even feel that jealous after he and I slept together. At this point, I felt like my head was going to explode. It felt like I didn't even know who Maria was anymore. The person sitting across from me casually suggesting something so twisted couldn't possibly be my sister, the same person I'd looked up to my entire life. Maria didn't just sound delusional. She sounded like an absolute deranged psycho. My own sister was sitting across from me, willingly trying to pimp me out to her fiancé. And she was seriously defending his actions as though they were completely normal. The sheer audacity, the betrayal, the disgusting nature of it all, it was too much to bear. I looked her straight in the eye and told her that she could consider her marriage dead before it even began. And I firmly stated that I wanted absolutely nothing to do with her, Matthew, or this wedding anymore. I also informed her that I was going to expose her and her fiancé in front of everyone for even coming to me with such a ridiculous demand. Hearing this, Maria tried to argue with me, but I was so furious at her that I left the meeting immediately. My hands were shaking as I drove myself back home, and when I reached my place I just broke down crying. Ever since then, Maria hasn't stopped texting me. She's been blowing up my phone relentlessly, begging me to keep my mouth shut. She knows exactly what will happen if I tell our parents or anyone else the truth. She knows it will destroy her image, her relationship, and everything she's been working towards. However, she still hasn't stopped pleading with me to reconsider her request to sleep with her fiancé. Honestly, I can't stop thinking about what she's getting herself into. I mean, imagine marrying someone like Matthew, a man who's been lusting after your younger sister for years? A man who felt so bold and entitled that he not only confessed his disgusting crush to his fiancée, but also convinced her that he disgusting crush to his fiancée, but also convinced her to ask her own sister to sleep with him as some kind of sick wedding gift. It makes my skin crawl just thinking about it. How could Maria be so blind and so desperate that she's willing to marry someone like him? Now I feel completely torn. On one hand, I know that exposing them will destroy her marriage before it even starts, and I don't want to be the one responsible for her life falling apart. But on the other hand, I shudder to think about her future with someone like Matthew. How can I just sit back and watch my sister marry a man like him knowing what I know? And also, how can I ever forgive her for putting me in this position in the first place? AITA, if I tell my family about my sister's crazy demand. Update 1. Wow, I can't believe I'm receiving so many responses to my post. In just a matter of a few hours, my inbox has been flooded with hundreds of DMs, and to all the creepy men who are reaching out to me, please stop. Seriously, I can't stress this enough. Stop. I'm already traumatized enough as it is, and the last thing I need right now is to deal with your gross, inappropriate messages. That being said, I also want to acknowledge the good side of the messages I've been receiving. To everyone who has reached out with kind words, helpful advice, and genuine support, thank you. You have no idea how much it means to me to feel seen and heard right now. For the first time in a long time, I don't feel so crazy or so alone. Reading through the comments and messages has made me realize that I am not overreacting. I'm not blowing this out of proportion. What's happening is seriously wrong, and it's validating to know that other people can see that too. My sister is about to willingly step into a marriage with a man who has openly admitted to having a disturbing, inappropriate crush on me. She's inviting a creep into our family, and she's defending him while doing it. That's not just unsettling, it's dangerous. And it's clear to me now that Matthew needs to be exposed for the person he really is. If I don't speak up about his inappropriate behavior, who will? I keep thinking about what might happen if he does become part of our family. What if he turns his attention to someone else? Maybe one of my younger cousins or another relative might not know how to recognize or handle this kind of behavior. I shudder at the thought of what this man is capable of if no one holds him accountable. He's already crossed boundaries with me. What's to stop him from doing it again with someone else? To those of you who have encouraged me to seek therapy, I want to say thank you for that as well. You're right. I need to face what happened to me all those years ago. For so long, I've just pushed it aside, locked it away in some corner of my mind, and tried to pretend it didn't matter, but it does matter. What Matthew did back then and the way it's affecting me now shows that it's not something I can just ignore anymore. Once all of this is over, I'm going to sit down with a therapist and start working through everything. Update 2. It's been 3 days since my last update. My sister has not stopped trying to convince me to agree to her disgusting request. She's relentless, texting me, calling me, trying every possible angle to manipulate me into saying yes. It's like she doesn't even realize how twisted and wrong this entire situation is. And as if things couldn't get any worse, she's now stooped so low as to offer me money. Yes, actual money, as though paying me to sleep with her man would somehow make me change my mind. At this point, I realized I couldn't stay silent any longer. So today I decided enough was enough. I knew I had more than enough evidence against Maria and Matthew to prove what was happening. I had saved all her texts, voice messages, and everything else she sent me in her attempts to coerce me into agreeing with her. With this evidence in hand, I decided it was time to involve my family. I called for a family meeting at my place, inviting my parents, grandparents, and a few of our cousins. When everyone arrived, I sat them all down and told them I had something incredibly important to share, and then I started talking. I laid everything out, every ugly, horrifying detail. I told them how Maria had been pressuring me to sleep with Matthew, her soon-to-be husband. I showed them the screenshots of our conversations where she begged, tried to guilt-trip me, and even offered me money to go through with it. I played the voice messages she had sent where she sounded disturbingly casual about what she was asking of me. I also told everyone about how Matthew apparently had a crush on me for years, even back when I was underage. I told them how Maria knew about his feelings and still decided to stay with him, and finally I confessed something I had been keeping inside for way too long. I told them about the incident that happened all those years ago at that party. I told them how Matthew tried to take advantage of me when I was drunk and vulnerable, how he refused to leave my room, how he hugged me, touched me, and whispered things that made my skin crawl. I told them everything, no matter how painful it was to relive. By the time I finished, the room was dead silent. Everyone looked completely stunned, as if they couldn't believe what they had just heard. My dad's face had turned bright red and my mom looked equally furious, her expression a mix of outrage and disbelief. My grandparents, who were usually so calm and composed, looked utterly horrified, and my cousins looked like they didn't know what to say or do. I know that a lot of you were worried that maybe my family wouldn't take me seriously. Trust me, I had the same fears, but I'm so relieved and honestly so grateful to say that every single one of them believed me without any questions. They didn't doubt a single word I said. As soon as I finished sharing everything, my parents came over to me, hugged me tightly, and told me that I had done the right thing by telling them. Hearing them say that made me feel so validated, like a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying had finally been lifted. I burst out crying while my mom held me and assured me that none of this was my fault. My dad, who can sometimes be more reserved with his emotions, looked like he was ready to explode with anger. He kept saying, "How dare that man touch my baby?" My grandfather, who's usually calm and collected, was not holding back either. He was ready to storm over to Matthew's place and confront him. He said he didn't care if Matthew was younger, stronger, or whatever. He would take him down if it meant standing up for me. My dad agreed with him, and for a moment the two of them were fired up like they were planning a whole battle strategy. It might sound intense, but honestly it made me feel so cared for. After feeling so alone in this for so long, having their support meant the world to me. For tonight, my mom and a few of my cousins have stayed back with me at my place to keep me company and make sure I feel safe. Meanwhile, my dad and grandfather have gone to Maria and Matthew's place to confront them directly. I won't lie, I'm a little nervous about what's going to happen. I don't know how Maria is going to react, and I'm scared of what this confrontation might lead to. Part of me feels sad for her because she's my sister. No matter what, I don't want to see her hurt, but at the same time I can't ignore the choices she's made or the person she's defending. I really hope for her sake that she makes the right decision and walks away from Matthew. It's not too late for her to see the truth about him and save herself from what would be an absolute nightmare of a marriage. As much as I'm angry and hurt by what she's done, I still want the best for her. Update 3. Hi everyone. I know all of you have been impatiently waiting for an update, and first of all, let me start with what happened the night my dad and grandfather confronted Matthew and Maria. When they arrived at her place, they fully expected Matthew to at least deny everything. Maybe try to save his face or come up with some pathetic excuse, but instead, to their absolute shock and disgust, Matthew unashamedly admitted to everything. He confessed without a hint of remorse, almost like he expected them to pat him on the back or something for his honesty. It was as if he thought owning up to his disgusting behavior and sick fantasies about me would somehow make it all okay. My dad, who had already been boiling with anger, completely lost it at this point. He punched Matthew right in the face. My grandfather didn't even try to stop him because at that moment everyone knew Matthew deserved it. Meanwhile, Maria was trying to defend her partner. She was very embarrassed that everyone had found out about her request to me. She kept telling Dad that she couldn't believe I had ratted her out to the whole family, as if what she had done was something worth protecting. My dad then gave her the scolding of her life. He let her have it, telling her in no uncertain terms how disappointed he was and how disgusted he felt that she could even think of asking her own sister something so horrifying. He made it very clear, alongside my grandfather, that they did not want her to marry a man like Matthew. But Maria, oh Maria, she refused to listen to reason. She outright told them that she couldn't live without Matthew, and if it came down to choosing between him and her family, she would choose him. Can you believe that? After everything, she chose him. My dad and grandfather argued with her for a while longer, trying to get through to her, but it was like talking to a wall. Maria was completely delusional. blinded by whatever twisted idea of love she had for this man. In the end, they realized there was no getting through to her, so they left after telling her that they wanted nothing to do with her anymore. Since that night, the decision has been unanimous on our side of the family. No one, not a single person, is attending her wedding. Everyone is disgusted by Matthew and absolutely horrified by Maria's actions and decisions. My parents, grandparents, cousins, everyone is standing with me. They believe me. They support me. They want nothing to do with them. Of course, Maria did reach out to me afterwards, angrily blaming me for ruining her wedding. She was furious as if I was the one at fault here. She had the audacity to make herself the victim in this situation and was furious that I didn't keep my mouth shut.